Dr. Mohammed Osman joins us to analyze the implications of Netanyahu's proposed full occupation plan and its potential to reshape both Israel's future and Gaza's fate. Mr. Osman, a very good day, and of course, it's always a pleasure to have you with us in any interview, sir, and welcome to the show. Sir, Netanyahu's government is pushing for a full occupation of Gaza. How much of this push is driven by internal political pressures and far right coalition demands?
Thank you for having me, Rana. Always a pleasure to be with you as usual and on cue, of course. Definitely the Netanyahu government now is moving forward with the maximalist scenario for the settlement of the conflict in Gaza. It seems now that the very dormant and secretive intentions and goals of this war are coming to light and are becoming the overtime publicly announced goals of this war, and that is the full occupation of the Gaza Strip, the elimination of whatever is left of the armed Palestinian factions and factions of resistance inside the Gaza Strip, and basically placing the entirety of the Gaza population under some form of military rule, martial law imposed by the Israelis, with the intent of eventually displacing them out of the Gaza Strip. I think this is what Netanyahu is heading right now. This is what the far-right components of his governing coalition, like Ben Gvir and Smotrich and others, all of the far-right nationalist and religious parties in his coalition wanted to go for this scenario. Even certain segments within his own Likud party want to go with this maximalist, absolutist scenario. Unfortunately, he is facing resistance from certain elements within his and an opponent of Netanyahu. Yet this did not prevent Netanyahu from apparently attempting to push forward his agenda. The military top brass of the Army of Occupation, namely Eyal Zamir, the chief of staff, also is opposed to the full reoccupation of Gaza by Israel. However, Netanyahu reportedly told him to stick to his lane and take the orders from the political echelons, basically, and implement them. And if he does not like it, he could resign. This is what the Israeli media reported, Netanyahu telling his military chief of staff. So it seems that we are inching more towards this very dark scenario of the reoccupation of the Gaza Strip. And it seems, and this is what is even more alarming, that the Israelis have received a very tacit green light from the Americans, that Washington is on board with this. When President Trump was asked yesterday about the possibility of Israeli reoccupation of the Gaza Strip, President Trump's reply was, "That's up for Israel to decide." This is a very dangerous statement made by President Trump, which basically delegates any responsibility and any powers with regards to the settlement of the issue in Gaza to Israel. It appears that the Americans now are only focused on the humanitarian aspect of things. At least this is what they claim. This is what Trump said. But they're not interested in imposing a ceasefire anymore, Rana. And this is really sad.
With mounting international condemnation and legal risks, do you believe Netanyahu will proceed with this plan? And what are the consequences for Israel's international standing, considering, Dr. Mohammed, what you just said about the United States? Of course, Trump yesterday said in a statement that the starvation in Gaza should not complete and humanitarian aid should enter Gaza. But when it comes to the occupation of Gaza and of course, what's happening in Gaza, the atrocities and genocides, and of course the deportation of all the Gazans, it's none of his business, in my words.
But unfortunately, this is exactly what President Trump has said. Israel can bear the consequences of its actions as long as it has the unconditional support it gains from the United States. And it seems that this unconditional support is still intact, is still there. It's not only that, it's increasing from the American side, it seems. It seems that the Americans are currently, at least, not applying any serious pressure on the Israelis to stop the war. And probably they never applied any pressure to begin with to genuinely end this war, at least since the beginning of the second Trump administration, and even during the era of Biden. Let's never forget that most of the atrocities that took place over the course of this war was in the Biden era, not in the Trump era. However, they equally share responsibility because this has been a historical stance taken by the United States, an institutional stance with regards to Israel. The idea of treating Israel as an integral part of US interests in the region, or even as an outsourced part of the United States of some sort, a 51st state, if you may. So this is how Israel is being treated, unfortunately. They get blank checks from the Americans all the time, so they can bear the legal consequences. What are the legal consequences that we can speak of? Warrants by the International Criminal Court. This did happen. What did the United States do? They imposed sanctions on the judges and the prosecutor general of the International Criminal Court. And instead of them being the law enforcers and the judges and the prosecutors, they have become the bandits, the outlaws that are now being prosecuted and punished by the US sanctions regime. It's quite absurd and it's quite silly and rather laughable and tragic. All of these things in one package, basically, what the world has come to, unfortunately. So, unfortunately, they can bear the responsibilities. All the European condemnations that are coming out of the European continent from many countries, the expanded recognition of the Palestinian state and whatnot, all of this has a very good symbolic value, a very good moral value. It serves to raise the morale of the Palestinians and the supporters of the Palestinian cause. It serves to appease the very negative public opinion in Europe with regards to Israeli atrocities in Gaza. Most of the European public opinion is against it right now. So it serves these stances by the Europeans. However, does it change anything on the ground? No, it doesn't. Why doesn't it? Because the Europeans are not taking any serious steps in order to pressure Israel in a serious and an effective manner, like imposing sanctions, like
Dr.
severing.
Mohammed, in light of the recent, of course, updates that are taking place nowadays, of course, the UN Security Council and countries like France and other countries, of course, like Germany, that are trying to that are against what Netanyahu is doing and started speaking up about the issue and about this catastrophe that's taking place. Don't you think any change is going to take place?
No, I don't. I
You
don't.
don't.
And I think
Okay.
most of the European leaders are a bunch of hypocrites, if you excuse my selection of words and
No,
terms.
sir, it's up to you.
Yeah.
Netanyahu has been accused, sir, of course, making his political survival a priority over the welfare of Israelis and Palestinians alike. How does this align with Israel's historical stance on Gaza?
It is true that Netanyahu is taking advantage of the war situation in order to ensure his own political survival and prolong his tenure in power. This is a given fact, unfortunately. But that does not mean that this war is going on because Netanyahu wants to stay in power. This is absolutely not true. The Israeli establishment, Israel as a state and as a nation, desires the elimination of the Palestinian cause, the liquidation of the Palestinian cause, the elimination of Palestinian existence on what remains of historical Palestine, which is the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, about 22% of the total area of historical Palestine. They want a one-state solution, an Israeli state, a Zionist state, a Jewish state with no Palestinians. The Palestinians should be ethnically cleansed out of what remains of the lands they are staying in. This is the true aim of the Israeli establishment, and this is really the consensus of the Israeli political class, and unfortunately, even of most of the segments of Israeli society. Most of the Israelis support the displacement of the Palestinians. Most of them oppose the two-state solution. Most of them oppose any form of Palestinian autonomy, let alone statehood. Netanyahu and his government and all of the political spectrum of Israel calls the Palestinian Authority and Fatah and the Palestine Liberation Organization terrorists. Not only Hamas, they're even calling the moderates, the ones who signed with them the Oslo Accords, the one who were engaged in the peace process, who recognized Israel. All of those are considered by Netanyahu as terrorists. The moderates, the sound-minded, the level-headed Palestinians, everyone is considered a terrorist by Netanyahu and the Israeli establishment as well. So this is a war, a war that will achieve a historical victory for Israel in their view, of course, that will entail the elimination of Palestinian existence, unfortunately.